and say good afternoon to everybody. Welcome everybody here to the house of Jacob. And today I am going to deal with, on the Sabbath day, I am going to deal with the Sabbath day itself. And I titled this lesson, The Sabbath, God's Day of Rest. And we're going to show you it is the Lord's day of rest. And we're going to show you as well that it is the seventh day. We're going to read all this from the Bible, because I know people think that the Sabbath day was changed from the seventh day to the first day of the week. And there was somebody that did try to change it. We're not going to really deal with that today. But if you do your little research, you will find out that the Roman Catholic Church, they tried to change the Sabbath day from the seventh day to the first day of the week. But you cannot find anywhere in the Bible where the Sabbath day has been changed. God set the seventh day as the Sabbath day from creation. And it is still the seventh day, and it will always be the seventh day. And it has a meaning in God's plan for the salvation of man. And we are going to show you the real meaning of the Sabbath day, what the Sabbath day was really pointing to. We're going to get to that part later in this lesson. But we're going to start out this lesson in the very beginning. We are going to begin at Genesis chapter 2. And we'll start reading at verse 1. Genesis 2 and verse 1. 2 and 1. Now this was after the Lord had created everything in 6 days. And we're going to find out that he rested on the seventh day and he sanctified it. Start reading at verse 1. Genesis 2 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made.
Now the Lord, he created everything in 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day from everything that he created and made. Go ahead and read on.
And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it.
Now God blessed the seventh day and he sanctified it. In other words, he set it apart. Go ahead and read on.
Because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made.
Now God, he created everything 6 days. Then he rested on the seventh day. And then he sanctified that day. Now, let's go over to Exodus chapter 19. Exodus chapter 19. And we'll begin reading at verse 9. Exodus 19, and we're going to pick it up at verse 9. That's when the Lord had brought the nation of Israel out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. We're going to find out that the Lord himself came down. He spoke to the people from the Mount Sinai. And he gave them the Ten Commandments. And in the Ten Commandments was included the Sabbath day. But first, let's start reading at chapter 19, and we'll pick it up at verse 9. 19 and 9. Okay, go ahead and read, bro.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee.
Now, Lord is speaking to Moses here. He's telling Moses here, Lo, I come in a thick cloud, that the people may hear, Moses, when I speak unto thee. Go ahead and read on.
And believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord.
Go ahead.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes.
Now, Lord, he's about to come down and deal directly with the people here. Lord wants these people to be about as clean as they can be anyway. He said, even wash your clothes. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want you, because the Lord is about to appear. Something very sacred is about to happen here. So he said, even wash your clothes. Don't even, when I come down, speak unto the people. Don't be standing there with even no dirty clothes on. Go ahead and read on.
11.
Go ahead and read.
And be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai.
Now he said, in the third day the Lord going to come down in the sight of the people. This is what the Lord is telling Moses. In the third day he will come down in the sight of all the people up on the Mount of Sinai. Now, skip down to verse 14 and continue reading. Go ahead, read.
And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people.
Go ahead.
And they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people,
Go ahead.
Be ready against the third day. Come not at your wives.
Now he said, be ready against the third day, and don't even come at your wife, because something sacred about to happen here. Because when you come at your wife, when a man come at his wife, then he become unclean. You understand what I'm saying? That is the teaching of the book. So now something sacred is about to happen here, and the Lord don't want anybody there being unclean. I'm going to read you something. We're going to get back to this in just a minute. But first, let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 21. I'm going to pick it up at verse 1, chapter 21 and verse 1, because I had a brother ask me, is it all right for a man to lay with his wife on the Sabbath day? And I told him no. Because the Sabbath day, it is holy unto the Lord. You understand what I'm saying? And when a man lay with his wife, he becomes unclean. Both of them become unclean. And when you're dealing with something sacred, you don't deal with something sacred when you're unclean. I'll show you something here. Let's go to Exodus, 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Now, this is when Saul was chasing David all over the country trying to kill him. But that ain't what I'm interested in here. But start reading at 1 Samuel 21, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. 21 and 1. Go ahead and read, brother.
Then came David to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest.
Go ahead. Now, David came to Ahimelech the priest, because David was looking for something to eat. You understand what I'm saying? He didn't really have time to be bothered with trying to prepare food and do all that, because he was running for his life. Right. So now he approached Ahimelech the priest, and he going to ask him for some food. Go ahead and read on.
And Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him,
Go ahead.
Why art thou alone, and no man with thee?
Now the priest asked David, he said, why are you alone and no man is with you? Go ahead and read on.
And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business.
Go ahead.
And hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee. And I have appointed my servants to such and such a place.
Go ahead and read.
Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present.
Now David asked the priest, he said, now give me 5 loaves of bread, or give me, if you don't have 5, give me whatever you have. Go ahead and read on. Because he needed to feed him and his people that was with him. Go ahead and read on.
And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand.
Now the priest said, I ain't got no common bread. I got some show bread that's really, it's only lawful for the priest to eat the show bread. You understand what I'm saying? So the priest let David know, I ain't got no common bread. But he going to let him know. He said, I only have the show bread, which wasn't nobody supposed to eat that but the priest. Go ahead and read on.
But there's hollow bread.
There's hollow bread. He's talking about the show bread. Go ahead and read on.
If the young men have kept themselves at least from women.
Now he said, now the priest said to David, if the young men have at least kept themselves away from women. You know, I ain't really supposed to give you this bread. Because ain't nobody supposed to eat it but the priest. But if the young men have at least kept themselves away from women. So, you know, in other words, they, to a degree, they are somewhat clean anyway. Right. Go ahead and read on.
And David answered the priest and said unto him,
Go ahead.
Of a truth, women have been kept from us.
Now, David answered the priest, said, of a truth, women have been kept away from us. Go ahead and read on.
From us about these 3 days.
For 3 days, since we've dealt with any women. Go ahead and read on.
Since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy.
Go ahead.
And the bread is in a manner common. Yea, though it was sanctified this day in the vessel.
Now he said, now this bread, it is holy, because there really ain't nobody supposed to eat it but the priest. Go ahead and read on.
So the priest gave him hollow bread, for there was no bread there but the show bread.
Go ahead.
That was taken from before the Lord, to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away.
So now the priest gave him, he gave him the show bread. But he said, at least, if the men have kept themselves away from women. You understand what I'm saying? Because when a man come into contact even with his wife, when he lay even with his wife, he become unclean. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir. So now, I'll give you this bread, but at least the men have kept themselves away from women. Because when you are dealing with some sacred, then you are not supposed to be unclean. Go back to Exodus chapter 19 now. We're going to pick it back up at verse 14. I just wanted to show you that. And this is why the Lord said when he's about to come down and stand on Mount Sinai, he told him, he said, wash your clothes and don't come near unto your wives for 3 days. Why? Because something sacred is about to happen here. Start reading. Go back to Exodus chapter 19. And we're going to pick it up at verse 14. Go ahead and read.
And Moses went down from the mount unto the people and sanctified the people.
Go ahead.
And they washed their clothes.
And they did as they were told. They washed their clothes. Go ahead and read on.
And he said unto the people, be ready against the 3rd day.
And he said unto the people, be ready against the 3rd day. Go ahead and read on.
Come not at your wives.
And don't come at your wives at this time. Because the Lord is about to show. Something very sacred is about to happen here. Go ahead and read on.
And it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount.
Go ahead.
And the voice of the trumpet is exceeding loud.
Now the Lord here, he's about to show up. And we're going to read that he's going to actually show up and stand on this Mount Sinai. And he's going to deal directly with the people here. Because the Lord, because when you start talking about the commandments, everybody wants to make it be the law of Moses. It was never the law of Moses. You understand what I'm saying? It was always the law of the Lord. And before the Lord give it to Moses, to give it to the people, he first going to speak it directly to the people themselves. So he can't go back and say Moses said. That's the first thing man will do. They do it now, don't they? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Every time you read them out of the law, they want to tell you, well, Moses said. No, Moses didn't say nothing. Only thing Moses said was what God told him to say. Right. Go ahead and read on.
So that all the people was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God.
Go ahead and read.
And they stood at the nether part of the mount.
Go ahead.
And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire.
Go ahead.
And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up.
Now the Lord have come down and he has stood up on the Mount Sinai. He is going to speak directly to the people. You want to know who giving you the commandments? God is giving you the commandments, not Moses. God is giving them to you. Start reading at Exodus 20 and verse 8 now. Go ahead and read.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor.
Go ahead.
And do all thy work. But
now start at verse 1. Let's back up. Start at verse 1. Then we'll skip down. Go ahead and read.
And God spake all these words, saying.
And who spake all these words, God. Saying? And God spake all of these words, saying. Well, he told Moses, tell the people, I'm going to come down and stand on Mount Sinai, and I'm going to speak directly to the people, right? So now this is God speaking directly to the people here. So you want to know who gave you the 10 commandments? God gave you the 10 commandments, not Moses. That's right. You're reading it out of the book for yourself. So don't argue with me about it. Argue with the word about it. I'm just reading it out of the word. And God spake all of these words, saying, go ahead and read on.
I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt,
go ahead.
Out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
And I started to put it in this lesson who this really is that's speaking directly to the people. I'm going to just tell you, and then if you need some proof, then I'll give it to you at another time. But this is really the one that became known as Jesus, that is standing on the Mount Sinai speaking unto the people. That is the teaching of the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? I know everybody thinks Jesus started with Mary. No, Jesus existed throughout eternity. That's why John wrote in 1 John, in the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's right. Yeah. And the Word created everything that was created, and without him was not anything made that was made. And that Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Yeah. And we beheld his glory as the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. It was the one that became known as Jesus that created everything that was created and that rested on the seventh day. And hallowed it. Now he's turning around here about to give it to the people here and include it in the 10 commandments. Now, he said, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of thy house of bondage. You want to know who brought Israel out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage? Go and read 1 Corinthians chapter 10. It will tell you Jesus was the one that did it. So now if he's the one that brought them out of Egypt, that brought them out of the house of bondage, then he is the one that's giving them the 10 commandments here. Right. Skip down to verse 8 now. Go ahead and read.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Now he said, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Remember, this is God speaking directly to the people here. Go ahead and read on.
6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work.
Go ahead and read.
But the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God.
Now what day did God say is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God?
7th day.
God said the 7th day, right? So what's that argue about? What are you trying to say? That God didn't know what he was talking about? He is the one that is giving you the 7th day as the Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates.
Well, that includes everybody. He didn't leave out nobody. Who did he leave out? Well, I ain't gonna work on the Sabbath day. I get my son to do it. No, you ain't. You still and broke it. Well, I get my maidservant to do it. You still and broke it. Well, I get my ox to go out there and work. You still and broke it. This includes everybody. Ain't nobody left out. Okay. Go ahead and read.
Verse 11.
Go ahead.
For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is.
Go ahead and read.
And rested on the 7th day.
And the Lord rested on the 7th day. Therefore he commands you to rest on the 7th day as well. Go ahead and read on.
Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Wherefore the Lord, he blessed it and he hallowed it. Let's go now to Exodus chapter 23. And we'll begin read at verse 10. Lord gave you the 7th day in the creation. Then he rested on the 7th day. Then he turned around and he included it in the 10 commandments. And he said, don't do any work, you nor your ox, nor your ass, nor anything. Or even the stranger that is within my gate. I ain't going to work. I ain't going to make my children work. I ain't going to make my maidservant work. I'll make the stranger that is within my gates work. Nope. You have still broken the commandment. Let's go now, Exodus chapter 23, and we'll begin reading at verse 10, 23 and 10. You read in Genesis it was the 7th day, right? That's one time. Then you read it again in Exodus chapter 2, that it was the 7th day, right? Start reading at Genesis chapter 20, Exodus rather, chapter 23, pick it up at verse 10, 23 and 10. Go ahead, read on.
In 6 years thou shalt sow thy land, and shalt gather in the fruits thereof.
Now he says 6 years. The Lord even had a Sabbath for the land. It needs to rest. And guess what? They broke that too. In 6 years, and notice always the number, the day of rest is always what? 7. 7. Go ahead and read.
11. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest and lie still.
Go ahead.
That the poor of thy people may eat.
Go ahead.
And what they leave, the beasts of the field shall eat.
Now he said you shall let it do what? You shall let it rest.
That's right.
That's what the Sabbath day is. It is God's day of rest. Yes. But we're going to find out it's bigger than just resting on this day or letting the land rest every 7 years. It is bigger than that. Go ahead and read. We're going to get down to that part. Go ahead and read.
In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive vineyard.
Go ahead and read.
6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest.
Now he says 6 days do your work, then on the 7th day you shall rest. Well, that's the third time he done said 7th day, isn't it? God, is this Moses talking or is this God talking?
God.
Go ahead and read on.
That thine ox and thine ass may rest, and the son of thine handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed.
Now he said that you may do this and that you might be refreshed. Because God created man. You understand what I'm saying? And he knows exactly what man needs. The Lord created everything in 6 days, and he rested, and he was refreshed. Let's go now to Exodus chapter 31, and we'll begin reading at verse 12. Exodus 31, and we'll begin at verse 12. 31 and 12. 31 and 12. Okay, go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
Now, and the Lord is speaking unto Moses, and he is telling Moses what to tell the people. Right, okay. Moses is not deciding what he's going to say to the people. God is telling Moses, Moses, you go tell the people this. Mm-hmm. So now whose words is it? It is God's words that he gave to Moses, but Moses to give to the people. Go ahead, read on.
Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying.
Now he says, speak unto the children of Israel. You got other people want to try to circumvent the law by saying the Sabbath day was just for the children of Israel. Well, we're going to let the Bible handle that a little bit later. Go ahead and read on.
Verily my Sabbath ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations.
Now he said it is a sign between me and you throughout your generation. A sign, that's a means of identification. You understand what I'm saying? It is a means of identifying something. It is a sign between me and you. And notice what he said, throughout your generations. Go ahead and read on.
That ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you.
That you might know that I am the Lord that doeth sanctify you, that sets you apart. In other words, when you keep the Sabbath day, Lord sanctified it, right? And when you keep it the day, he said the day that he said, the seventh day, then you too are sanctified.
Right.
Because people want to say, I've been sanctified. Well, one question you should ask, do you keep the Sabbath day? Well, no, we ain't got to do that no more. Well, you ain't sanctified. Every time God said, be sanctified and be holy, he always gave them a commandment to keep, didn't he? He said, be ye holy, keep my Sabbath day. Be ye holy, keep my dietary law. Be ye holy, keep my high day. He always gave them something to do. Because that is how you be holy, by being obedient unto the commandments of God. Go ahead and read on, brother.
14.
Go ahead.
You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you.
Now he said the Sabbath day, God said the Sabbath day, it is holy unto you. That's why you don't come before the Lord unclean on the Sabbath day. Because it is holy unto you. Go ahead and read on.
Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death.
Well, God got serious about this thing. Now, haven't he? He said, everyone, this is what God said. Everyone that defileth it shall be put to death. So that lets you know he's serious about this thing. And I can read you over in Numbers where God had a man stoned to death for breaking the Sabbath day. Don't nobody ever talk about that. They say, well, you can get stoned for adultery, you can get stoned for murder, but nobody ever said anything about you can get stoned for defiling the Sabbath day. Okay. And God had the man stoned. Because Moses and the rest of them, they were trying to figure out, what we going to do with this man. Right. So they decided we going to just lock him up until the man of the Lord be determined. Yes. Then the Lord said unto them, stone him. Right. So did Moses stone him? God had him stoned. Moses and them just carried out the commandment. That's right. Go ahead and read some more.
For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people.
Go ahead.
6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest.
But in the seventh, and notice what it keeps saying, is the Sabbath of rest. So now this is the fourth time here that God has said that the seventh day is the Sabbath. That God has said it now, not Moses. This is the fourth time. We done read it already, haven't we? Go ahead and read on.
Holy to the Lord.
Go ahead and read.
Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death.
Go ahead and read.
Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations.
Go ahead.
For a perpetual covenant.
Now he said throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. It didn't say, no, because you have some, they try to get around it too. Well, this is just as long as Israel was in the land. But the Lord said for a perpetual covenant throughout your generations. As long as there's a generation, then you were supposed to keep the Sabbath day. Go ahead, read on.
It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed.
And on the seventh day God rested and he was refreshed. That's what he said. And he told you to keep the seventh day. Do all your work at 6. And on the seventh day, rest that you might be refreshed. Go ahead, read on.
And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communion with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone, written with the finger of God.
Then he gave him 2 tables of testimony written with the finger of God. Now, we ain't going to bother reading, but Moses came down out to Mount Sinai, and he saw what Israel was doing, and he broke them 2 tables, right? Yeah. You know what God said? Come right on back up here. I'm going to give you 2 more with them same commandments on it. Because I've even had people to try to get around it by saying, well, you know, Moses broke them 2. Well, yeah, he did. But God, come on back up here, Moses. I'm going to give you 2 more with them same commandments on there. Now, let's go to Isaiah chapter 56, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. Because others say, you know, well, that was just for the children of Israel. Well, let's see. Isaiah chapter 56, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 56 and 1. 56 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
Thus saith the Lord.
Thus said who?
The Lord.
So this is what thus said the Lord. This ain't what thus said Isaiah, right? Thus said the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
Keep ye judgment and do justice.
Go ahead.
For my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man that doeth this.
Now he said, blessed is the man that will do this. Go ahead and read.
And the son of man that layeth hold on it, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it.
Well, he didn't say blessed is the Israelite, did he? He said, blessed is the man that doeth this, and the son of man that layeth hold of it, that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it. Go ahead and read on.
And keepeth his hand from doing any evil.
That will keep the Sabbath day from polluting it, and his hand from doing any evil. So this ain't just for Israel then, is it? God said, blessed is the man that doeth this, and the son of man that will lay hold of it, and keep his hand from doing any evil. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 3.
Go ahead.
Neither let the son of the stranger that have joined himself to the Lord speak, saying, the Lord hath utterly separated me from his people. Neither let the eunuch say, behold, I am a dry tree.
Now he said, don't let the stranger say that the Lord have separated me from his people. Skip down to verse 6. Go ahead and read.
Also the sons of the stranger that joined themselves to the Lord.
Now he said, the sons of the stranger that will join themselves to the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
To serve him.
To serve the Lord. Go ahead.
And to love the name of the Lord. To be his servant.
And to be his servants. Go ahead and read on.
Everyone that keepeth the Sabbath from polluting it.
Everyone that will keep the Sabbath from polluting it. Go ahead and read on.
And taketh hold of my covenant.
And taketh hold of my covenant. What is his covenant? His covenant is the 10. Go ahead and read.
Even them will I bring to my holy mountain.
They say if they do that, then I will bring them to my holy mountain. Go ahead and read on.
And make them joyful in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and their sacrifices shall be accepted upon mine altar.
Go ahead.
For mine house shall be called an house of prayer for all people.
So now, what do the stranger have to do? He got to keep his hand from doing any evil. He got to take hold to the covenant. And he got to keep the Sabbath day from polluting it. Then God said, I will bring him to my holy mountain, because my holy mountain shall be called a house of prayer for all people. So now, do the stranger have to keep the Sabbath? Yes. Thus said the Lord, not thus said Isaiah. Thus said the Lord. The stranger have to do it as well. Now, let's go to Exodus chapter 34. And we're going to pick it up at verse 21. Exodus 34, and we'll pick it up at verse 21. 34 and 21. (34 and 21). Okay, go ahead and read.
6 days thou shalt work.
He says 6 days thou shalt work. Go ahead and read.
But on the seventh day thou shalt rest. In earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest.
Now he said the seventh day thou shalt. So now, that's the fifth time, ain't it? In earing time, that means when you plow. Harvest time, that means when you gather in your crop. So you say, well, if it's time to do the plowing, to plant the seed, rest the seventh day. If it's time to harvest the crops, rest the seventh day. That's what God said. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So now that's the fifth time already we done read that he said the seventh day is the Lord's Sabbath day. Sooner or later, the light got to come on, y'all, at some point. You can't keep missing this. You understand what I'm saying? He done said it too many times for you to keep missing it.
Right. Right.
We done read 5 times already where he said the seventh day. Now I'm asking anybody to show me where he said the first day even one time. Not 2, 3, 4, 5, but one. The next time somebody tell you that the Sabbath day is the first day of the week, tell them to read it to you out of the Bible just one time. Can't do it. It ain't there. So now, either you going, because man set it up the first day of the week. Either you going to do what God said, or you going to do what man said. You going to do one or the other. You decide. Because if they come up with any, and it got to be the first day. If they come up with any other day other than the seventh day, they got it wrong. Because well, my religion, we believe in the third day. Okay, well, show me where the book said the third day then. Then you got some saying every day is the Sabbath day, and then you say, show me that. Because every day is the Sabbath day, that means you can't work then, can you? You don't work no time. So you done broke the commandment again then. Because he says 6 days do thy work, and on the seventh day rest. So you can't never work if every day is the Sabbath day. Come on, I'm telling you, the light got to come on at some point. Sooner, at some point. Let's go now to Exodus chapter 35, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 35, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. 35 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read, bro.
And Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together, and said unto them,
Go ahead.
These are the words which the Lord hath commanded, that ye should do them.
Now, Moses said to the people, these are the words that the Lord commanded that you should do them. Go ahead and read on.
6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day, there shall be to you an holy day, a Sabbath of rest.
We got another time here. No, that makes 6 times we done read it, right? That it is the seventh day. He said now he said, but six days work shall be done, but on the Sabbath day, go ahead and read on.
A Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death.
Now he said it is a Sabbath of rest unto the Lord. You know, one thing keeps saying Sabbath, seventh day, Sabbath of rest unto the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day.
Now he said, don't kindle a fire throughout your habitations up on the Sabbath day. Now this dealing with cooking here. That's what this is dealing with. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm going to show you. Let's go to Exodus chapter 16, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Exodus 16, and we're going to begin reading at verse 1. Because the Lord had it set up so everything will be provided for you on the Sabbath day if you follow God's instructions. That's the problem. Nobody wants to follow instructions.
Okay.
That's where the problem come in at.
Tell the truth.
Everybody gonna do it their way.
That's right.
Read the instructions. That's all you got. Why you think you got them anyway?
Okay.
Why you think God bothered to put all this stuff in it 6 times? He didn't say it 7th day. Those are instructions. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
don't do no work. You know your son, know your daughter, know the stranger within your gate, know your ox, know your ass. That is instructions. Right. Now he's giving you some more instructions here. Don't kindle a fire on the side. This have to do with cooking. That's what it have to do with.
Amen.
You know how I know that? Because when the Lord was dealing with the high days, the annual high days, you know what he said? No work shall be done except that which every man must eat. So that means that cooking is work then, isn't it?
That's right.
But he said it is all right for you to do it on those high days where food is to be served. But he said other than that, don't do any work on those days. No work shall be done except that which every man must eat.
Yes.
So yeah, when you have the tabernacles and the unleavened bread and the Pentecost, when the food is to be served, you don't have to ask me again. Yes, you can cook.
Okay.
Start reading it at Exodus 16, and we're going to begin reading at verse 1. 16 and 1. Go ahead and read.
And they took their journey from Elam, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin,
Go ahead.
which is between Elam and Sinai.
Now this is right after Israel had come out of Egypt, and they took their journey. Go ahead and read on.
On the 15th day of the 2nd month, after their departing out of the land of Egypt.
Now they departed out of the land of Egypt on the 15th day of the 1st month. So this is a month later now, and they are there in the wilderness now. Go ahead and read on.
And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness.
Now there go Israel murmuring, and you know what they was murmuring about. You know what they was murmuring about. Food. What they always murmur about. We get to murmuring here. Every time we have a feast, I got to listen to some murmurs. I didn't get enough of this. Somebody should have fixed that. Who ate up all of that? And we got tables just lined up with food. So you didn't get no fried chicken. Well, go get some fried lamb chops. But Israel always murmuring over food. That is this people's nature. And when I hear them murmur, I said, boy, you a real Israelite. I know you an Israelite. We ain't even got to run no genetic tests on you. I know who you are. Go ahead and read.
Verse 3.
Go ahead.
And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill us, to kill this whole assembly with hunger.
Now they was willing to go back into bondage now, just so they could sit by the flesh pots. As if God had brought them out of bondage to take them into the wilderness and kill them, to starve them to death in the wilderness. Now he done showed all these great signs and all these great wonders in the sight of all other people.
That's right.
To bring them out and dried up the Red Sea, that they may go over dry shod. Then drowned in Pharaoh's army. Now he went through all of that just to bring them out into the wilderness to starve them to death. If he wanted them to die of starvation, he could have brought a famine up on Egypt and killed them and everybody else in Egypt. Go ahead and read.
Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you.
Go ahead.
And the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them, whether they will walk in my law or no.
Now he said, Lord, so I'm going to rain bread from heaven. And they shall go out and gather a certain rate every day. That's, whatever I tell them to gather, that's it. Don't gather no more, don't gather no less. Just gather what I tell. That I may, this prove, mean to test them.
Right.
to whether they will walk in my law or not. In other words, I'm going to tell them to get a certain rate. Now, if they go out there and they don't get the amount that I tell them to get, then they're not walking in my law. I'm going to tell them how much to get. So now that I may prove them or test them to see whether or not they will walk in my law. Go ahead, what verse out?
Verse 5.
Go ahead and read.
And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily.
See what I'm saying? Why? On the 6th day. Because tomorrow is the Sabbath day.
Right.
That's right.
And you ain't supposed to be cooking on. So now, when you on the 6th day, they going to get twice as much.
That's right. That's right.
Then they can prepare enough on the 6th day that they may have enough for the 7th day. Then they don't have to break my law.
That's right.
Skip down to verse 16. Go ahead and read.
This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded.
Uh-huh.
Gather of it every man according to his eating.
Go ahead.
An omer for every man.
Now he said, gather every man according to his eating, an omer for every man. However much that is, they knew that was the measurements that they used. You know, we use pounds and ounces and all of that stuff. You know, that was the measurement. Now, an omer for each man. Go ahead and read on.
According to the number of your persons.
Uh-huh.
Take ye every man for them which are in his tents.
Go ahead.
And the children of Israel did so.
Go ahead.
And gathered, some more, some less.
So some had more in their tent, and so they gathered more. Some had less in their tent, so they gathered less. But an omer for each person in your tent. Go ahead and read on.
And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over.
Go ahead.
And he that gathered little had no lack.
Uh-huh.
They gathered every man according to his eating.
Go ahead.
And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning.
Uh-huh.
Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses.
No, don't save none. So I'm going to have some more out there in the morning when you get up. It'll be some more out there. So don't call you. I'm going to save me some. That ain't what I told you to do. I told you to get enough for your eating so that you don't have too much or too little. But as the nature of this people, notwithstanding, they hearken not unto Moses. Go ahead and read on.
But some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms.
No better form, and it bred worms. Go ahead and read on.
And stank. And Moses was wroth with them.
Go ahead.
And
so, you know, this how you. It was obvious to them that they didn't obey the commandment,
Right.
and they go. Now they let the stuff and bred worms, and it started to stinking. Well, he didn't obey the commandment, because I went by his tent and it was stinking in there. I know he didn't obey it. Go ahead, read.
21.
Uh-huh.
And they gathered it every morning,
Go ahead.
every man according to his eating.
Uh-huh.
And when the sun waxed hot, it melted.
Go ahead, read.
And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses.
Go ahead, read.
And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord.
Now he said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that you will seethe.
Now he said, bake that which you will bake. In other words, whatever cooking you going to do. You know, whether you're going to bake it or boil, that's what seed mean, to boil or something. If you're going to bake it or boil it, you do that today on the 6th day. And that way you will have enough for the 6th day as well as for the 7th day, because you are not supposed to do any cooking on the 7th day. Go ahead and read on.
And that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
Go ahead and read.
And they laid it up, and they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade.
Go ahead.
And it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein.
See, then they was commanded to do that on the 6th day, but not on the 3rd day or the 4th day. Because when they did it any other day other than the 6th day, then the stuff stank and it bred worms. But when they did it as they were commanded to do it, then on the 6th day, and they laid it up until the 7th day, it didn't stink, it didn't breed worms, or none of that stuff, because the Lord commanded it to be done. Go ahead and read on.
25.
Go ahead.
And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field.
Go ahead.
6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none.
6 days. Now we got it again, don't we? Yep. Again. Lord just keeps saying it over and over again. The seventh day is the Sabbath unto the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day for to gather.
Go ahead.
And they found none.
We gonna find none. He told you ain't gonna be nothing out there. Went out there looking anyway. I don't need you going out there looking. Lord said, I'm gonna give you enough on the sixth day for the sixth day and the seventh day, and there won't be none there on the seventh day. But you had Israel anyway. Well, I'm gonna go out here and see. Well, he went out there, wasn't nothing out there. Go ahead and read.
And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws?
Go ahead.
See, for that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore he giveth you on the sixth day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place.
Go ahead.
Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day.
Go ahead.
So the people rested on the seventh day.
So they rested on the seventh day. Now, let's go to Matthew chapter 12. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Matthew 12. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. 12 and 1. Because occasionally, notice I say occasionally, circumstances may dictate something different. Occasionally. Matthew 12 and began at verse 1. 12 and 1. Go ahead and read.
At that time, Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn.
Go ahead.
And his disciples were in hunger and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat.
Now, it went through the cornfield on the Sabbath day. They began to pluck the corn and they began to eat it. Because apparently they had not prepared for the Sabbath day for whatever reason. Go ahead and read.
But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him,
Go ahead.
Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day.
Go ahead.
But he said unto them, Have ye not read what David did when he was in hunger, and when and they that were with him?
Now, he asked him a question. He said, have you not read what David did when he was a hungered, and they that was with him? Because David was hungry, right? Saul was chasing them everywhere. He ain't had time to sit down and pay nothing. Because he was running for his life. But circumstances dictated that, he had to do whatever he had to do in order to eat. Right. Go ahead and read on.
How he entered into the house of God and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat.
Now, we read that, didn't we? Right. But even when the priest gave him the showbread, he said, look here, man, now, you got these, I hope you ain't got none of these men here that's defiled, they're unclean from, laying with their wives or nothing like that. So, it's letting them know, although this is, I'm going to do this for you, but this is still a sacred thing here, and I'm not supposed to be doing this. But because circumstances at this particular time dictated that David needed to eat, him and his people. Yeah. And at this time, Jesus and his disciples was a hunger. But Jesus is the one that gave you the Sabbath day. He is the one that told you about eating, preparing on the sixth day what you must eat for the seventh day. But nevertheless, this particular time, that had not been done. So therefore, they did go into the fields and they ate. Go ahead and read on.
Neither for them which were with him,
go ahead,
but only for the priests. Or have ye not read in the law, how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless?
Now on the Sabbath day, the priests, they profane the Sabbath and they are blameless. How is that? They're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath day, right? That's right. But then the ministry said that sacrifices had to be made every day. Every day. You understand what I'm saying? They had what was called a daily sacrifice. And the priest had to offer up that sacrifice every day, Sabbath day. It didn't matter what day it was. Right. Every day of the year, they had to offer up a lamb in the morning and a lamb in the evening. But yet they was blameless because that was all a part of the ministry. But like, they was out there plowing a field or something. They was doing what they were doing because it was a part of the ministry. They would not have been blameless if they had been out there plowing the field.
Okay.
But they was offering up sacrifices that it was commanded them to do every day of the year. That's why it said they were blameless. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 6.
Go ahead and read.
But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple.
Go ahead.
But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, ye would not have condemned the guiltless.
Go ahead.
For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day.
And he is Lord of the Sabbath day because he's the one that gave you the Sabbath day anyway. So now he knows that it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath day. But, don't try to get around the law with none of that Pharisee stuff. I have brothers come to me with these hypothetical Pharisee questions. Well, what if I got to go to the store for my mama because she ain't got nothing to eat? Well, give her some of yours.
That's right. That's right.
She don't like that well.
Wait.
So they looking for a way to get around it. No, you understand what I'm saying? Don't want to keep it law, so they come up with all these hypothetical questions. Some of that Pharisee stuff, because that's what they always did. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 9.
Go ahead and read.
And when he was departed thence, he went into their synagogue.
Go ahead.
And behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying,
Go ahead.
Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day? That they might accuse him.
Now they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath day that they might accuse him? Go ahead and read on. That's what they asked him, that they might accuse Jesus of breaking the Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
And he said unto them, What man shall there be among you that shall have one sheep, and if it fall into a pit on the Sabbath day, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out?
Now, what nothing they could say, because they knew they would. If that sheep fell in the ditch on the Sabbath day, they knew that they would go in that ditch and get that sheep out of there. They can say, well, when the Sabbath sun just went down Friday evening, so I got to let it stay in there until Saturday at sundown. They knew that. That's why he put it to them that way. Now he said, what man of you would not pull his sheep out of the ditch on the Sabbath day? Go ahead and read on.
How much then is a man better than a sheep?
Go ahead and read.
Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days.
He said, wherefore it is lawful to do well on. He didn't say, you can go and work and do all of that stuff on the. Because they use this too to try and get around the Sabbath day. But he didn't say, you ain't gotta. You can work, you can cook, you can do whatever you want to do on the Sabbath. All he said, it is lawful for you to do well on the Sabbath day. Then he went on to heal a man, but he reminded them, whatever one of you all have a sheep that fall in the ditch on the Sabbath day, that won't go in the ditch and pull him out. Go ahead and finish that up.
Then saith he to the man, Stretch forth thine hand.
Go ahead.
And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole like as the other.
Now, that is good. Now, let's go to Leviticus chapter 23, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. I just wanted to read that because some people try to read that trying to get around the Sabbath day. Jesus ain't said nothing about you can work or cook and all that stuff on the Sabbath. All he said was it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. See somebody out there stranded in the cold with their head under the hood trying to figure it out. Well, let's see. No, I can't help you. I'll come back after the Sabbath day and help you. No, it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath day. Start reading at Leviticus chapter 23. And we'll begin reading at verse 1. 23 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying.
And notice it is the Lord that is speaking unto Moses, and he is telling Moses what to tell the people. Go ahead and read.
Speak unto the children of Israel.
Go ahead.
And say unto them, concerning the feast of the Lord.
Now the Lord going to give you all the feasts here, all of his feasts. Here in this 23rd chapter of Leviticus, we're only going to deal with one of them. He said, concerning the feast of the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
Which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations.
That you shall proclaim them to be holy convocations. And we keep every one of them here. And the reason we keep every one of them is because the Lord spoke unto Moses and told Moses to tell the people that you shall have a holy convocation. We got them coming up. Around the latter part of this month and in early October. We still got the blowing of the trumpets we got to deal with. And we still got the Day of Atonement. And we still have the 8-day Feast of Tabernacles. The first one is a high Sabbath day, and the last day, which is the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, is a high Sabbath day. And we deal with every one of them because it says here that they are the feast of the Lord, and you shall have a holy convocation on these days. And if you go into the New Testament, you will find out that even the people in the New Testament, they still kept these days. Why? Because the Lord said they was to be done forever throughout your generation in all of your dwellings. Go ahead and read.
Even these are my feasts.
Now, even these, the Lord said, even these are his feasts. Go ahead and read.
6 days shall work be done.
Go ahead.
But the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest.
If the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. We got it again, don't we? Lord keeps saying 7th day, people. God is saying that the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest. Go ahead and read on.
And holy convocation.
A holy convocation. Go ahead and read.
You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
It is the Sabbath, not of the Jews, but it is the Sabbath of the Lord in all of your dwellings. The 7th day, Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. That's why we have in our service today, and not like most other people tomorrow. We are doing it today because God commanded that it be done today. This is a commandment from the Lord, people. This ain't something that was started by the house of Jacob. This is a commandment from the Lord that you are to have a holy convocation on the 7th day. Let's go to Matthew chapter 28, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. Matthew 28, and we're going to read just one verse, verse 1. 28 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
In the end of the Sabbath.
Now it said at the end of the Sabbath. Go ahead and read.
As it began to dawn toward the first day of the week.
Well, if it's at the end of the Sabbath and it's dawning toward the first day of the week, then what day is the Sabbath day? It's the 7th day, isn't it?
Right.
Got it again, don't you? This is in the New Testament that you are reading out of. We don't need to read anymore. At the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. Let's go and read something from the Revell Bible, not Revell, but the New Compact Bible Dictionary here. And it is, the title is Sabbath. And I just want you to read just that first sentence right there. Go ahead and read it.
The early Christians.
Now the early Christians, who were the early Christians? That was Jesus and his disciples, Paul, Peter, all them men. Go ahead and read on.
Most of whom were Jews.
Now it said most of them. It didn't say all was Jews. Most of whom were Jews. But some of them was Gentiles. According to this anyway, most, not all, most of whom was Jews. Go ahead and read on.
Kept the 7th day as a Sabbath.
They kept the 7th day as the Sabbath day. The early Christians. Because everything was the way they tell it anyway. Everything changed when Jesus came and died. Supposedly, that's what they tell you anyway. When Jesus died, he nailed all these laws to the cross. He nailed all the high days, the Sabbath day, and the unleavened bread, and Pentecost, and all of that stuff to the cross. But long after Jesus died, the people that was called Christians in the Bible, they were still keeping these days. You know why? Because the law said forever throughout your generations in all of your dwellings. Whether you are a Jew or a Gentile did not matter. Because we read what the Lord said to Israel to keep it right. Then we read what the Lord said to the stranger that they are to keep it as well. So it was for everybody, not just for the Israelites. Let's go to Acts chapter 13, and we'll pick it up at verse 13. Acts 13 and verse 13. Now this was the Apostle Paul, and he was going around, he was evangelizing, and he just went from city to city. And he was preaching mostly to the Gentile. He was he was raised up as an apostle, really mostly to the Gentile. However, he was an apostle to Israel as well, but mostly to the Gentile. Start reading at Acts 13 and began reading at verse 13. Go ahead and read.
Now when Paul and his company loosed from Paphos, they came to Perga and Pamphylia.
Go ahead.
And John, departing from them, returned to Jerusalem.
Now, this was Paul, when they loosed from Paphos, they came to Perga and Pamphylia. So now, they weren't in Jerusalem now. They're in another city, Pamphylia. Go ahead and read on.
But when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch and Pisidia.
Now, when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch and Pisidia. Go ahead and read on.
And went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down.
And they went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. So it didn't matter where they was. You understand what I'm saying? Because, they want to tell you sometimes that, the Sabbath day was only supposed to be kept when you was in the land. But now here they are in, where did it say they were? In Pisidia. And they went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. Now, skip down to verse 42, and I'm going to show you who was there in the synagogue. Go ahead and read on. They have a holy convocation, in other words, because the Lord said, have a holy convocation on the Sabbath day. On the Sabbath day. You understand what? That was the law, that you were to have a holy convocation. And that is exactly what they were doing. Didn't matter what city they was in, they was having a convocation. And I'm going to show you who was there at the convocation. Go ahead and read verse 42.
And when the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath.
So who did you have sitting up there in the synagogue on the Sabbath day? You had the Jews sitting there, and you had the Gentiles sitting there as well. You know why the Gentiles were sitting there? Because the law said that the stranger must take over God's Sabbath day and take over his covenant. Then if they do that, then I will bring them into my house of prayer. But my house of prayer shall be called a house of prayer for all people. So they understood that because they read the book. And that is the problem nowadays. Don't nobody read the book. Nobody reads the instructions, much less follow them. First thing you got to do is read the instructions, right? Then after that, you have to follow them. Nobody even bothers to read the instructions. Because God, we've been reading instructions all day here. Don't do any work on the Sabbath day. Don't kill the fire on the Sabbath day. Have a holy convocation on the Sabbath day. Those are instructions. Now, once you read the instructions, then you follow them. And that is what these people were doing. They knew what the instructions said. Therefore, they kept the instructions. Right. So now, when the Jews was gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached unto them the next Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 43. Now when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul and Barnabas, who speaking to them persuaded them to continue in the grace of God.
Go ahead and read.
And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of God.
And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of God. So the Jews were there, Gentiles were there as well. Let's go to Acts chapter 18. We're going to pick it up at verse 1. We're working our way down to it. We're going to show you what this Sabbath day is really all about, what this Sabbath day is really all about. But let's go to Acts chapter 18, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Acts 18 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
After these things, Paul departed from Athens and came to Corinth.
Go ahead.
And found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy, with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome.
Now Paul, he's in Corinth now. He in another city now. He went to Pisidia, and they was keeping the Sabbath day, Jews and Gentiles. Now he's in another city, Corinth, and we're going to find out they were doing the same thing. Go ahead, read on.
And came unto them.
Uh-huh.
And because he was of the same craft,
Go ahead.
he abode with them and wrought, for by their occupation they were tent makers.
Go ahead, read on.
And he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath.
Now he reasoned in the synagogue, it said every Sabbath day. He reasoned with the people. Go ahead, read on.
And persuaded the Jews and the Greeks.
And he persuaded both the Jews and the Greeks. So now, another city. What are they doing? Corinth now. They doing the Sabbath day. And who do you have sitting there? You got the Jews sitting there, and you got the Gentiles sitting there. Because they understood the instructions. You understand what I'm saying? They understood that the Sabbath day was for everybody, whether you were a Jew or a Gentile, did not matter. Let's go to Luke chapter 4, and we're going to pick it up at verse 14. Luke 4, and we'll begin reading at verse 14. 4 and 14. Show you what Jesus' custom was. Start reading at verse 14. Go ahead and read.
And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee.
Go ahead.
And there went out a fame of him through all the region round about. And he taught in their synagogues, being glorified of all.
Go ahead and read.
And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read.
Now, that's Jesus' custom. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up for to read. Like we doing now. Standing up on the Sabbath day, reading the scripture. That's what Paul's custom was. And that's what Jesus' custom was as well. He went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. Go ahead and read on.
And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah.
And then they brought him the book of the prophet Isaiah. You know where Isaiah is, right? That is a part of what we call the Old Testament. Back then, there was not what we call Bible. There was just books. You had the book of Isaiah, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Ezekiel. Later on, many years later, man put all these books together and called it Bible, because the word Bible means books. But before that, it was just book of Isaiah, book of Ezekiel, book of Jeremiah. So now they delivered him the book of Isaiah. In other words, they brought him some scripture, and he stood up to read.
All right.
And I can show you other places where he went in and he taught on the Sabbath day. You can read Luke chapter 6. I just left that out. I had it in there, but that was too much. I scratched that. Then you can read Luke chapter 13. That was too much. I scratched that too. But go and read it on your own, and you could find out that he went in the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he taught the people. Because that is what you are supposed to do on the Sabbath day. Attend a holy convocation, and there is supposed to be the reading and the teaching of the scripture. That's why we do it this way. Let's see. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 17. I'm just trying to figure out what I was going to leave out. Because when I was putting it together, I got long-winded. Jeremiah chapter 17. And we're going to pick it up at verse 19. 17 and 19. Okay, go ahead and read.
Thus said the Lord unto me, Go and stand in the gate of the children of the people.
Now Jeremiah is saying, thus said the Lord unto me, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people. Go ahead and read on.
Whereby the kings of Judah come in,
Uh-huh.
and by the which they go out.
Go ahead.
And in all the gates of Jerusalem.
Now he said, I want you to go and stand in the gates whereby the kings of Judah come in, whereas they go out. And he said, now in all of the gates. I want everybody there in Jerusalem to hear this. Go ahead and read on.
And say unto them,
Uh-huh.
Hear ye the word of the Lord.
And say unto him, Jeremiah, hear ye the word of the Lord. Go ahead and read on.
Ye kings of Judah,
Uh-huh.
and all Judah,
Go ahead.
and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem,
Uh-huh.
that enter in by these gates.
See what it says? Ye kings of Judah and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem that enter in by these gates. I want every one of them to hear. You make sure you go into every gate and stand there and say unto these people, I want everybody in Jerusalem to hear this. Go ahead and read on.
Thus saith the Lord,
Thus saith the Lord. Go ahead and read.
Take heed to yourselves,
Uh-huh.
and bear no burden on the Sabbath day,
Go ahead.
nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem.
Now he said, take heed. You tell them, Jeremiah, take heed to yourself and don't bear no burdens on the Sabbath day. Don't bring it in and don't take it out. Because I got a commandment that you ain't supposed to be doing no work on the Sabbath day. So don't tell them, thus said the Lord, don't bear no burdens on the Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
Neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day.
Go ahead and read.
Neither do ye any work,
Uh-huh.
but hallow ye the Sabbath day,
Go ahead.
as I commanded your fathers.
He said, but hallow you the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. Go ahead and read on.
But they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear.
We knew that already, right? They didn't obey, neither did they incline their ear. Go ahead and read on.
But made their necks stiff,
Uh-huh.
that they might not hear, nor receive instruction.
Well, said that they might not hear nor receive. Israel, this people ain't never wanted to receive no instruction. If you want to find a people that don't want no instructions, just find one of us. They ain't never wanted to follow instructions. They don't want to follow nobody's. Well, if they ain't going to follow God's instruction, you know they ain't going to follow nobody else. So now, he said, but they stiffen their neck that they might not hear nor follow instructions. Go ahead and read on.
24.
Go ahead and read.
And it shall come to pass,
Uh-huh.
if ye diligently hearken unto me, saith the Lord,
Go ahead.
to bring in no burden through the gates of this city on the Sabbath day, but hallow the Sabbath day, to do no work therein.
Now he said, it will come to pass if you will diligently listen unto me, said the Lord, that don't bring no burdens into this city, but hallow the Sabbath day, and don't do any work therein. Go ahead and read on.
Then shall there enter into the gates of this city kings and princes.
Now he said, then if you do that, there will enter into this gates kings and princes. Go ahead and read on.
Sitting upon the throne of David,
Uh-huh.
riding in chariots and on horses.
Go ahead.
They and their princes, the men of Judah, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem.
Uh-huh.
And this city shall remain forever.
Now he said, if they will do that, then this city will stand forever, because we have kings, and they will be sitting up on the throne of David, and this city, it will stand forever. If they will keep the Sabbath day, there will kings coming into Jerusalem. Go ahead and read on.
And they shall come from the cities of Judah,
Uh-huh.
and from the places about Jerusalem,
Go ahead.
and from the land of Benjamin,
Uh-huh.
and from the plain,
Go ahead.
and from the mountains, and from the south, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices,
Go ahead.
and meat offerings,
Uh-huh.
and incense, and bringing sacrifices of praise
Go ahead.
unto the house of the Lord.
Go ahead and read.
But if ye will not hearken unto me to hallow the Sabbath day,
But now he said, if you don't listen unto me, to hallow the Sabbath day, go ahead and read on.
and not to bear a burden, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on
Uh-huh.
the Sabbath day,
Go ahead.
then will I kindle a fire in the gates thereof,
Uh-huh.
and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem,
Uh-huh.
and it shall not be quenched.
He said, but if you don't listen unto me, not to bear no burden, then I'm going to set a fire in Jerusalem that will not be quenched. But he said, if you keep the Sabbath day, this city will stand forever, and there will be kings and princes sitting up on the throne of David. Guess what? Israel didn't keep it. Let's go to 2 Chronicles chapter 36. And we're going to pick it up at verse 13. 36 and 13. Lord said, if you will just keep the Sabbath day, then this city will stand forever, And then there will be kings and princes sitting up on the throne of David. Just keep the Sabbath day. Do that. 36, and we'll pick it up at verse 11. 36 and 11. Go ahead and read.
Zedekiah was 1 years old when he began to reign.
Now, this was the last king that Israel had of their own people. And he was 21 years old when he began to reign. Go ahead and read on.
And reigned 11 years in Jerusalem.
Uh-huh.
And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord his God.
Go ahead.
And humbled not himself before Jeremiah the prophet, speaking from the mouth of the Lord.
Now, let's let you know that Zedekiah was around during Jeremiah's administration, during the time when he was going about prophesying. Go ahead and read on.
And he also rebelled against King Nebuchadnezzar, who made him swear by God.
Go ahead.
But he stiffed his neck and hardened his heart from turning unto the Lord God of Israel.
Go ahead.
Moreover, all the chief of the priests and the people transgressed very much after all the abominations of the heathen,
Go ahead.
and polluted the house of the Lord which he had hallowed in Jerusalem. And the Lord God of their fathers sent to them by his messengers, rising up betimes and sending, because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place.
You know, Lord, he was just trying to convince Israel to repent and to turn away from their wickedness and turn back to him. So, you know, he had compassion on these people, and he's constantly sending his prophets, telling these people, you know, you need to repent. But they would not listen. Go ahead and read on.
But they mocked the messengers of God.
Go ahead and read.
And despised his words, and misused his prophets.
Go ahead.
Until the wrath of the Lord arose against his people, till there was no remedy.
Until that, you know, the Lord just finally had enough. There was no remedy. You know, be times I'm sending you my prophet, rising early, telling you to turn away from your wickedness and turn back to me. But Israel just refused. He said, there finally was no remedy, and this is what God did. Go ahead and read on.
Therefore he brought upon them the king of the Chaldees.
Therefore God brought up on them the king of the Chaldeans. Not the Chaldeans just decided they going to come up on Israel, but God brought them up on them. Go ahead and read on.
Who slew their young men with the sword in the house of their sanctuary.
See, this never would have happened if Israel just kept the Sabbath day, would it?
Right.
Would not have happened, would it? Because he said this city will stand forever. And there will be kings and princes sitting up on the throne of David. But Israel just refused even to keep the Sabbath day. Therefore, God sent the Chaldeans down upon them. Go ahead and read on.
And had no compassion upon young man or maiden,
Go ahead.
old man, or him that stooped for age. He gave them all into his hand.
Go ahead.
And all the vessels of the house of God, great and small, and the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king and of his princes.
Go ahead.
All these he brought to Babylon, and they burnt the house of God,
Go ahead.
and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire, and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof.
Well, didn't God say by the mouth of Jeremiah, if they don't keep the Sabbath day, then he said, I'm going to send a fire upon this city. Didn't he say that?
Yeah.
Well, all he's doing is keeping it. Well, all they had to do was just turn away from that wickedness and at least keep the Sabbath day, and the city would have remained. And Israel would have had kings and princes sitting up on the throne of David. Go ahead and read some more.
20.
Go ahead.
And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia.
Go ahead.
To fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah.
Go ahead.
Until the land had enjoyed her Sabbath.
Go ahead.
For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years.
Because when Israel was in the land, they didn't let the land even keep Sabbath, did it? Only way the land could keep Sabbath, God had to get Israel out of it. So now he said, now I'm going to have Nebuchadnezzar come down there and take them out for 70 years. Then the land can enjoy her Sabbath day. Let's go now to Nehemiah chapter 13, and we're going to pick it up at verse 15. This is after the 70 years. Nehemiah chapter 13, and we'll pick it up at verse 15. Lord, I want to keep the people mindful of the Sabbath day, and we're going to find out really why the Lord wants to keep the people mindful of the Sabbath day. But let's go to Nehemiah chapter 13, and we're going to pick it up at verse 15. Now this is after the 70 years. Israel has gone back to the land. And guess what? Soon as they foot hit the land, they start doing the very thing that got them kicked out. I mean, foot barely back in the land, and you're going to do the same old dumb stuff that got you kicked out in the first place. Start reading at Nehemiah 13, chapter 15. Go ahead and read on.
In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath.
Well, they shouldn't have been doing that. I mean, can't you wait? At least until tomorrow after the Sabbath day to tread the wine. Man. Oh, treading wine presses on the Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
And bringing in sheaves.
Uh-huh.
And lading asses.
Go ahead.
As also wine grapes.
Uh-huh.
And figs.
Go ahead.
And all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day.
Go ahead.
And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals.
Uh-huh.
There dwelt men of Tyre also therein,
Go ahead.
which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem.
Now, you know, here the children of Israel, and then they got to make them some wine on the Sabbath day. They can't wait till the next day. Then you got others there in Jerusalem selling fish and all manner of wares, and Israel is buying that on the Sabbath day, what they wasn't supposed to been doing. Go ahead and read on.
17.
Go ahead and read.
Then I contended with the nobles of Judah.
Then Nehemiah said, I contended with the nobles of Judah. You know, these are the ones that's supposed to be in some kind of position of leadership. Go ahead and read on.
And said unto them, What evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day?
Now, he said, I contended with, you know what contend mean? I mean, you know, things got a little heated with them, in other words. I contended with them, and I asked them, what evil thing is this that you are doing on the Sabbath day? Go ahead and read on.
Did not your fathers thus?
They said, didn't your fathers do that? Now remember, this is after Israel got kicked out the land for other things, but also for not keeping the Sabbath day. And then spent 70 years in Babylon. Now they back in the land doing the same old dumb stuff. And Nehemiah said, didn't your fathers do that, man? What is this y'all doing that you polluting the Sabbath day? Your fathers did that. You remember what happened to them, don't you? Go ahead and read on.
And did not our God bring all this evil upon us?
He said, didn't our God bring all of this evil upon us? Remember what your fathers did, and because of what they did, God brought all this evil upon. God can always bring some kind of drama upon you when you don't obey his commandment, especially when you know that you are supposed to obey his commandment. That's what people don't understand. Then when the Lord bring that drama on them, then they want to holler, woe is me. Mm-hmm. First thing they going to holler, well, why me? Why not? You knew that you were supposed to obey the commandment, but you just chose not to do it. Go ahead and read on.
And upon this city?
Now didn't God bring all this upon us and upon this city? Go ahead and read on.
Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath.
Now you are turning around and you bring in more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath day. Our fathers, they profaned it, and they brought evil upon them. Now you're going to turn around and do the same thing, and you're going to bring more wrath upon us. Go ahead and read on.
And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut.
Now, just before the Sabbath day, you know, because God day started at the going down of the sun. Right. So just as it was getting dark, just before the Sabbath day, Nehemiah said, I commanded that these gates be shut. You ain't going to bear no burdens here, not long as I'm here. Go ahead and read on.
And charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath.
And he charged, don't open these gates until after the Sabbath. They shut them up and don't open, because they ain't going to bear no burdens in and out of these gates on the Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
And some of my servants said I at the gates, that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day.
Go ahead and read.
So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them.
You know, they still hanging around. They figure they going to find a way to get in anyway. You know, maybe we hang around the gate long enough. Maybe, somebody open, then we can slip in there with our wares. So they just hanging around. then he said, then I testified against them. Go ahead and read on.
And said unto them,
Uh-huh.
Why lodge ye about the wall?
Go ahead.
If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you.
Uh-huh.
From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath.
He said, Nehemiah told him, he said, if you do it again, I'm going to lay hands on you. Then from that, then they got the message. But now, my point is, Israel got in trouble for breaking the Sabbath day. They spent 70 years in bondage, and as soon as they get out, what do they turn right around and do? Start to break the Sabbath all over again. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 26. And we're going to pick it up at verse 27. Leviticus 26, and we're going to pick it up at verse 27. 26 and 27. Okay. Go ahead, read.
And if ye will not for all this hearken unto me, but walk contrary unto me.
Now this is the Lord, he said, telling Israel, all the things he will do to them if they walk contrary unto his commandment. Now he said, if you will walk contrary unto me and not listen unto me. Go ahead and read on.
Then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury.
Now he said, then I'm going to walk contrary unto you in fear. That's fair, isn't it? You walk contrary unto me, I'm going to walk contrary unto you. That's fair, isn't it? What's wrong? What's unfair about that? Go ahead and read on.
And even I will chastise you 7 times for your sins.
Go ahead and read.
And ye shall eat the flesh of your son, and the flesh of your daughter shall ye eat.
Now I can read you out from the Bible where Israel did that. Why? Because they walked contrary unto the Lord. He walked contrary unto them, and they wound up being under siege, and they had to eat the flesh of their own children. Go ahead and read on.
30. And I will destroy your high places and cut down your images.
Now he said, I'm going to destroy all them high. You know what these high places are? These are places of worship. Other than where you are supposed to go and worship the true and living God. Lord said, I'm going to tear down all of these high places that you have. Go ahead and read on.
And cast your carcasses upon the carcasses of your idols.
Go ahead.
And my soul shall abhor you. And I will make your cities waste, and bring your sanctuaries unto desolation.
Go ahead.
And I will not smell the savor of your sweet odors.
Now he said, I'm going to tear down your cities, I'm going to tear down your sanctuaries, and I'm going to leave them in desolation. And when you offer up your prayers with the incense, he said, I'm not going to smell that either. Go ahead and read on.
And I will bring the land into desolation.
And he said, I'm going to bring the land into desolation. Well, he did. We read in 2 Corinthians chapter 36 where he did that, didn't he? Then he bring Nebuchadnezzar down into Jerusalem and tear it up and lay it in the desolation. Well, I'll let you know God means what he says. Go ahead and read on.
And your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at
Go
it.
ahead.
And I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you.
Go ahead.
And your land shall be desolate,
Now
and
he
your
said,
cities waste.
I'm going to scatter you among the nations, and your land shall be desolate. Go ahead and read on.
Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath.
And then when I scatter you among the nations, then the land going to enjoy her Sabbath day. Go ahead and read on.
As long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land, even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath.
Go ahead and read.
As long as it lieth desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when ye dwelt upon it.
See, long as you was in the land didn't rest, because you didn't let it rest. I gave you a commandment, said let the land rest every 7th year. But you didn't do that. Now the only way the land can enjoy a Sabbath here is that I have you taken out of the land and shipped into bondage. So now Israel is out of the land, and the land over there enjoying her Sabbath day. Because Israel is scattered now throughout all of the world. Like Jesus said in Luke chapter 21. Now, skip down to verse 40. Go ahead and read on.
If they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers with their trespass which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary unto me, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised hearts be humble, and they then accept of the punishment of their iniquity, then will I remember my covenant with Jacob.
Now he said, if they uncircumcised heart be humble, and they accept of the punishment, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob. Go ahead and read on.
Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob,
Uh-huh.
and also my covenant with Isaac,
Go ahead.
and also my covenant with Abraham will I
Uh-huh.
remember, and I will remember the land.
And I will remember the land. Now Israel going to get kicked out of the land, but God said, I ain't going to forget that covenant that I made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the covenant was that that land would belong to them for an everlasting possession. It don't matter how many times they mess up and get kicked out, nevertheless, that land will belong to them for an everlasting possession. Go ahead and read a little more.
43.
Uh-huh.
The land also shall be left of them,
Go ahead.
and shall enjoy her Sabbaths,
Uh-huh.
while she lieth desolate without them.
Go ahead.
And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity,
Uh-huh.
because they despise my judgments,
Go ahead.
and because their soul abhorred my statutes.
Uh-huh.
And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them,
Uh-huh.
to destroy them utterly,
Not destroy them completely. Go ahead and read on.
and to break my covenant with them.
Uh-huh.
For I am the Lord their God.
Go ahead.
But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors,
Uh-huh.
whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt
Go
in
ahead.
the sight of the heathen, that I might be their God. I am the Lord.
Now, let's go to, so Israel, we're not going to bother reading all that today, but you can even go in Luke chapter 21, and it will tell you how Jesus said Israel would be scattered in bondage throughout all nations. Now, Lord is talking about gathering them. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 31, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. 31 and 1. Jeremiah 31, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 31 and 1. 31 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
At the same time, saith the Lord,
Uh-huh.
will I be the God of all the families of Israel, and they shall be my people.
Now, when the Lord talk about all the families of Israel, he's talking about Judah, the 2 tribes, and he's talking about Israel, the 10 tribes, which make up 12 tribes, the whole nation of Israel, all the families of Israel. Go ahead and read on.
Thus saith the Lord,
Uh-huh.
the people which were left of the sword found grace in the wilderness,
Now, go ahead.
even Israel,
Uh-huh.
when I went to cause him to rest.
Even Israel, when I went to cause him to rest. This is the Lord talking about when he gathered Israel. That is when Israel's going to rest. Go ahead and read on.
The Lord hath appeared of old unto me, saying,
Uh-huh.
Yea, I have loved thee with an everlasting love.
Go ahead.
Therefore with loving kindness have I drawn thee.
Uh-huh.
Again I will build thee,
Go ahead.
and thou shalt be built, O Virgin of Israel.
Go ahead.
Thou shalt again be adorned with thy tabrets, and shalt go forth into the dances of them that make merry.
Uh-huh.
Thou shalt yet plant vines upon the mountains of Samaria. The planter shall plant, and shall eat them as common things. For there shall be a day that the watchmen upon the Mount Ephraim shall cry, Arise ye, and let us go up to the mount unto the Zion, unto the Lord our God.
Uh-huh.
For thus saith the Lord, Sing with gladness for Jacob, and shout among the chief of the nations. Publish ye, praise ye, and say, O Lord, save thy people, the remnant of Israel.
Go ahead.
Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coast of the earth.
Now, Israel, they've been scattered everywhere. You know, he brought them out of Egypt way back then. Now, Israel, they've been scattered into all nations, and now the Lord is talking about gathering them out of all nations, even when he will cause them to rest. Go ahead and read on.
And with them the blind and the lame,
Go ahead.
the woman with child and her that travaileth with child together.
Go ahead.
A great company shall return thither.
Uh-huh.
They shall come with weeping,
Go ahead.
and with supplications will I lead them.
Uh-huh.
I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way,
Go ahead.
wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn.
Go ahead and read.
Hear the word of the Lord, O ye nations, and declare it in the isles afar off,
Go ahead.
and say, He that scattered Israel will gather him, and keep him, as a shepherd doth his flock.
Now, the one that scattered Israel is Jesus, and that's the one that's going to gather them. And Jesus even said that. You know, you can go in Luke and read it. You can go in Matthew and read it as well. Now, the one that scattered Israel, he is the one that is going to gather Israel, and that's going to happen at his coming. But skip down to verse 31 now. Go ahead and read on. This is what the Lord is going to do with the nation of Israel when he gathers them. Verse 31. Go ahead and read on.
Behold, the days come, saith the Lord,
Go ahead.
that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, and with the house of Judah.
Now this is when he's going to deal with them as the whole nation. You know, we're under the new covenant today as individuals. But as a nation, this is when God going to make the new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Go ahead and read on.
Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt.
Now, what was the covenant that he made with the fathers when he brought them out of the land of Egypt? The 10 Commandments, wasn't it?
Right.
And he said, I'm going to make a new covenant. When he brought them out of Egypt, he put them on tables of stone. But he said, I ain't going to do that this time. I'm going to put them in their heart and write them in their mind.
That's
You
right.
know, they ain't going to look at no stone. They ain't going to look at no fringes. They ain't going to look at nothing. I'm going to put it in their hearts and in their minds. Go ahead and read on.
Which my covenant they break.
Go ahead.
Although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord.
Go ahead and read.
But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord,
Go ahead.
I will put my law in their inward parts and write them in their hearts.
Now he said, I'm going to put my law in their inward parts and I'm going to write them in their hearts. Go ahead and read.
And will be their God, and they shall be my people.
Go ahead.
And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more.
He said, for I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. But what did he say that new covenant was going to be? He said, a law in their hearts, and I'm going to write it in their mind.
Right.
He didn't say I'm going to do away with the law under the new covenant. I'm going to write the law in their hearts and in them same laws, including the seventh day. That's what the old covenant was, wasn't it?
Right.
He didn't say I'm going to change something. He said this time I'm going to put the law in their heart and write it in their mind. That same seventh day, Sabbath day. Let's go further. Let's go now to Zechariah chapter 3. And we're going to pick it up at verse 8. Zechariah chapter 3. And we're going to pick it up at verse 8. You ain't got much longer. Hang in there. Zechariah 3. And we're going to pick it up at verse 8. 3 and 8. Okay, go ahead and read.
Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee,
Go ahead.
for they are men wondered at. For behold, I will bring forth my servant, the branch.
And he said, I'm going to bring forth my servant, the branch. You know who the branch is?
Jesus.
That is Jesus. Go ahead and read on.
For behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave the graving thereof, saith the Lord of hosts. And I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day.
Then we read what Jesus, what the book said that, you know, when he make the new covenant with him, and when he returned, make the new covenant with him. Then he said, their sins and their iniquities I will remember no more.
That's right.
So now, what day is this he talking about? He going to remove the iniquity of them in one day? That is during the millennium. Go ahead and read on.
In that day, saith the Lord of hosts,
Now he said, in that day, said the Lord of hosts. Go ahead and read on.
shall ye call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree.
In that day shall ye call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree. Let's be clear what time this is talking about. Let's go to Micah chapter 4. And we'll begin reading at verse 1. Because this is last day stuff that we are reading about here. That is the day that the Lord is going to remove the iniquity. Because that day represents the 1,000 years when the Lord return and establish his kingdom on this earth. Micah chapter 4. And we'll begin reading at verse 1. Because he said, in that day, every man going to sit under his vine and under his fig tree. Start reading at 4 and 1. Go ahead and read on.
But in the last days it shall come to pass.
But in whose days? In the last days.
Right.
This end time stuff you're reading about here. In the last days it shall come to pass. Isaiah said the same thing. Isaiah chapter 2. That let me know they both got their information from the same source. In the last days it shall come to pass. Go ahead and read on.
that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountain, and it shall be exalted above the hill,
Go ahead.
and people shall flow unto it.
Now you're reading about the government of God that he will establish on this earth at his coming. Go ahead and read on.
And many nations shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of the... And many nations shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of God of Jacob.
Go ahead.
And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
And the reason is because that's where the Lord going to be dwelling at. There in Jerusalem. Go ahead and read on.
And he shall judge among many people,
Go ahead.
and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn any war anymore.
Now we know this is yet future. Because he said it's going to come to pass in the last days. And look at what else he says. Go ahead and read on.
But they shall sit every man under his vine.
In the last days this is going to happen.
Right.
And they shall sit every man under his vine. Go ahead and read on.
And under his fig tree.
And under his fig tree. Go ahead and read.
And none shall make them afraid.
Go ahead.
For the mouth of the Lord of hosts have spoken.
For the mouth of the Lord of hosts has. In the last days this is going to happen. That is that day. In Zechariah he said in that day. What day? The 1,000 years. That is what that day represents. The 1,000 years. Let's go now to Isaiah chapter 11, and we'll pick it up at verse 1. 11 and 1. Remember, the Sabbath day is about a day of rest. And as we're going to read in a little while here, 1,000 years is as one day with the Lord, and one day is as 1,000 years. But let's go to Isaiah 11, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 11 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
And there shall come forth a rod of the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots.
Now here we have that branch again that's growing out of Jesse's roots. And we know this branch is Jesus, and this is dealing with him at his second coming. Go ahead and read on.
And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding,
Go ahead.
the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge, and of the fear of the Lord.
Go ahead.
And shall make him of a quick understanding in the fear of the Lord. And he shall not judge after the sight of his eyes, neither reprove after the hearing of his ear.
Go ahead and read.
But with righteousness shall he judge the poor, and reprove with equity for the meek of the earth.
Go ahead.
And he shall smite the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips shall he slay the wicked.
Now he's going to do all that at his second coming. But skip down to verse 9. Go ahead and read on.
They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain.
No, they ain't going to hurt or destroy all of his government, because he said the nation's not going to learn war anymore, didn't it? So there would be no hurt or destruction in all of his holy mountain during that 1,000 years or during that day of rest. Go ahead and read on.
For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea.
Go ahead and read.
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse.
Wait a minute. He said, and in that day there shall be a root of Jesse. Go ahead and read on.
Which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To which shall the Gentiles seek.
Now he said the Gentiles, they will seek unto it. Go ahead and read on.
And his rest shall be glorious.
And his rest shall be glorious. This rest, that is what the Sabbath day is really all about. It is about this day of rest. That's why it is called the Sabbath of rest, because it was pointing to the 1,000 years when the Lord established his kingdom on this earth. That is also called God's day of rest. Go ahead and read on.
And it shall come to pass in that day
Go ahead.
that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people,
Go ahead and read.
which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Hamath and from the islands of the sea.
Go ahead and read.
And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth.
So when in that day of rest, the Lord is going to do all this. Let's go now to Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Not only will Israel have rest in that day, but the whole earth will be at rest. Isaiah chapter 14, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 14 and 1. Okay, go ahead and read.
For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel,
Go ahead.
and set them in their own
And he's
land.
going to have mercy. He's going to set them in there. They've been scattered. You understand what I'm saying? And now you're reading about their gathering. He's going to have mercy on them, and he will set them in their own land. Go ahead and read on.
And the strangers shall be joined with them,
Go ahead.
and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob.
Uh-huh.
And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place.
Uh-huh.
And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were.
Uh-huh.
And they shall rule over their oppressors.
Go ahead and read.
And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow.
See what it says? It shall come to pass in that day. It said the Lord will give thee rest from thy sorrows in the day that he gathered them. In that day of rest. Go ahead and read on.
And from thy fear,
Uh-huh.
and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve,
Go ahead and read.
that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, how hath the oppressor ceased, and the golden city ceased?
Go ahead.
The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in the wrath, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke.
They talk about the king of Babylon, the golden city. That is this last Babylon, as it is described in the 17th chapter of Revelation. And the real king of Babylon is Satan. That's who the real king of Babylon is. Go ahead and read on.
He that ruled the nation in anger
Uh-huh.
is persecuted,
Go ahead.
and none hinder it.
Go ahead and read.
The whole earth is at rest,
Uh-huh.
and is quiet. They break forth into
See
singing.
what it said? This time the whole earth is at rest, and it's quiet, and they break forth into singing. Go ahead and read on.
Yea, the fir trees rejoice
Uh-huh.
at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon saying,
Go ahead.
since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us.
Uh-huh.
Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at the coming.
Go ahead.
It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations.
Go ahead and read.
And they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Thy pump is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy vows. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee.
Go ahead and read.
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?
Now how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son? That's the real king of Babylon. Lucifer, as we know him as Satan, the devil. Go ahead and read on.
How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nation?
Let's go to 2 Peter chapter 3. And we are almost about to wind this up, because we're going to understand really what this Sabbath day is really all about. Let's go to 2 Peter chapter 3. We're going to read just one verse, verse 8. Second Peter chapter 3, verse 8. Okay, go ahead and read.
But beloved,
Uh-huh.
be not ignorant of this one thing,
Go ahead.
that one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day.
See, one day with the Lord is 1,000 years as but one day. That's why the Lord keeps talking about in that day.
Right.
In what day? In this 1,000-year day. Let's go and read about it. Let's go to Revelation chapter 20, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. 20 and 1. This is the day of rest. This is the day that the Lord is really talking about when he gave you the Sabbath of rest. It was all pointing to this day, the 1,000 years of rest, when he said the whole earth will be at rest. Let's start reading at Revelation chapter 20, and we'll begin reading at verse 1. 20 and 1. Because he's going to first bind up Satan for 1,000 years. Get the rest breaker out of the way. Start reading at Revelations 20 and 1. Go ahead and read on.
And I saw an angel come down from heaven,
Now we are dealing with at the coming of the Lord. I saw this angel come down from heaven. Go ahead and read on.
having the key of the bottomless pit,
Uh-huh.
and a great chain in his hand.
Go ahead.
And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years.
Now he bound him up for 1,000 years, or you could say for a day.
Right.
Because a day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as but one day. So now he done bound him up for this 1,000 years or for this day. Go ahead and read on.
And cast him into the bottomless pit,
Go ahead.
and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season.
In other words, he completely took him out of commission for 1,000 years or for a day. Go ahead and read on.
And I saw thrones, and they that sat upon them.
Go ahead.
And judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus,
Go ahead.
and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads,
Go ahead.
or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years.
And they live and they reign with Christ for this 1,000 years or for this day. Go ahead and read on.
But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection.
Go ahead.
Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years.
And they going to reign with him 1,000 years. 1,000 years when? During that 1,000 years of rest, that day of rest. Let's go to Psalms chapter 95, and we're going to pick it up at verse 7. Because this seventh day represents God's day of rest. That's why it is called the Sabbath of rest. Let's go to Psalms chapter 95. You got two more after this one, and you're done. Psalms 95, and we're going to pick it up at verse 7. 95 and 7. Okay, go ahead and read.
For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand.
Go ahead.
Today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your heart.
Now he's saying to the people today, you hear the Lord's voice, don't harden your heart. Go ahead and read on.
As in the provocation, and as in the day of temptation in the wilderness.
Now he said, not as the people did in the day of provocation, and in the day of temptation, as in the wilderness. Don't do what they did. He said, because what they did, because of what they did, they will not enter into my rest. Go ahead and read on.
When your fathers tempted me.
He said, in the days that your fathers tempted me. Go ahead and read on.
Proved me.
And they tested me. Go ahead and read.
And saw my work.
And they saw my works. Go ahead and read.
40 years long was I grieved with this generation.
Go ahead.
And said, it is a people that do err in their heart.
Go ahead.
And they have not known my ways. Unto whom I swear in my wrath that they shall not enter into my rest.
Now he said, unto whom the Lord said he swear in his wrath that they won't be in his rest. And what rest he talking about? He talking about the 1,000 years. He said, because they tempted me and they provoked me in the wilderness, therefore they will not be in my rest. Go ahead and read on.
Unto whom I swear in my wrath they should not enter into my rest.
They said, unto whom I swear in my wrath that they will not enter in my rest. Because there is a rest to the people of God. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 3, and we'll pick it up at verse 7. Paul quoted this here, but he explained it. Hebrews chapter 3, and we're going to pick it up at verse 7. 3 and 7. God gave man 6,000 years or 6 days to operate. And the seventh day, man is going to rest. Because if you go back, I ain't said from the beginning when God created the heaven and the earth, from the time God created man and set him on the earth, it's been about 6,000 years. Now, after the 6,000 years, we go into the 7,000 year, or the seventh day, because a day with God is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as but one day. Start reading at 3 and 7. Go ahead and read.
Wherefore, as the Holy Ghost saith, today if you will hear his voice,
go ahead.
Harden not your hearts, as in the provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness.
Now, Paul is saying to the people, he said, the Holy Ghost said, which we know that is the word of God, he said, don't harden your hearts as in the day of provocation, in the day of temptation in the wilderness. Now, he's warning these people, don't you do what Israel did in the wilderness, because the Lord swore in his wrath that they would not enter into his rest. Now, if you turn around and do the same thing that they did, you will not enter into that day of rest. Go ahead and read on.
When your fathers tempted me,
Go ahead.
proved me, and saw my works 40 years.
Go ahead.
Wherefore I was grieved with that generation,
Uh-huh.
and said, they do always err in their heart,
Go ahead.
and they have not known my ways.
Go ahead.
So I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest.
See what the Lord said? He said, so I swear, because of what they did in the wilderness, so I swear in my wrath that they will not enter into my rest. Go ahead and read on.
Take heed, brethren,
Uh-huh.
lest there be any of you an evil heart of unbelief.
Now he said, now you take heed. He warned them of the same thing. Don't do like them people did. Take heed, brother, lest there be any of you of an evil heart. Go ahead and read on.
And departing from the living God.
And departing from the living God. In other words, as Israel did. And how did they depart from the living God? By not being obedient unto his commandment. They departed from the living God, and he said, I swear in my wrath, they're not going to enter into my rest. Now you take heed, lest there be any of you of an evil heart, and you don't enter into that rest. Go ahead and read on.
But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. For we are made partakers of Christ,
Go ahead.
if we hold the beginning of our confidence steadfast unto the
You
end.
might say you are made partakers if you hold steadfast unto the end. Now, go to chapter 4 and pick it up at verse 1. What day did God say was that day of rest? The seventh day, he said, didn't he? But now we're dealing with another kind of rest here, aren't we? And he's telling you don't do like the children of Israel did in the wilderness, because I swear in my wrath, they wasn't going to enter into my rest. Now he said, you take heed, lest there be an evil heart in you, and not enter into that rest. Because there's a rest for the people of God, and that is what that Sabbath day really is pointing to. Go ahead and read on.
Let us therefore fear, lest the promise being left us of entering into his rest.
Wait a minute, you see what Paul said? Let us therefore fear. These are promise be left us of entering into that day of rest. Let us fear. Go ahead and read on.
Any of you should seem to come short of it.
And if any of you should seem to come short of it, go ahead and read on.
For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, and not being mixed with faith in them that heard it.
He said, well, he said, for unto us was the gospel preached, and unto us I could even say the gospel was preached, as well as unto them. But it did not profit them because they didn't believe. Go ahead and read on.
For we which have believed do enter into rest.
Now he said the ones that believe do enter into rest. Go ahead and read.
As he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world.
Now he took it all the way back to the beginning here, didn't he? Because that is what that seventh day really represented. It represented a day of rest. That is what it was all pointing to. It's about every Sabbath day you are reminded that you need to do what you are supposed to do, that you might enter into God's day of rest, his real day of rest. And that is the seventh day, or the 7,000 year. Go ahead and read on.
Verse 4.
Go ahead and read.
For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this
Wait a
wise.
minute, he spake in a certain place on the seventh day on this, still the seventh day. Because the seventh day is God's day of rest. And as we read earlier, 1,000 years with the Lord is but one day, and one day is as 1,000 years. And what it was really pointing to, God's real day of rest. Go ahead and read on.
And God did rest the seventh day from all his works.
Go ahead.
And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest.
Go ahead.
Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein.
Wait a minute. Seeing there remain that some must enter therein. Because he said to Israel, you ain't going to enter into my day of rest. Them ones that provoked him there in the wilderness, not all provoked him, but the ones that provoked him there in the wilderness, he said, you won't be in that day of rest. Seeing there is some that must enter therein. Go ahead and read on.
And they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief.
Go ahead and read.
Again, he limiteth a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time as it is said, today if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts.
Go ahead.
For if Jesus had given them rest,
Wait a minute. If Jesus had, you mean Jesus was back there? That's what this said. Isn't it?
Okay.
If Jesus had given them, I told you earlier that he was there in the beginning that created everything that was created. If Jesus had given them rest, go ahead and read on.
then would he not afterward have spoken of another day?
Then he afterwards would not have spoken of another day. Go ahead and read on.
There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God.
There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. That is what this seventh day is really all about. That is what this Sabbath day is really pointing to, the rest to the people of God. That is why it is called the Sabbath of rest. Go ahead and read on.
For he that is entered into his rest, he also have ceased from his own works, as God did from his.
Go ahead.
Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest.
See what it said? Let us labor, therefore, to enter into that rest. Go ahead and read on.
Lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief.
Lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. But what day did he say? The seventh day. That is the day of God's rest. And that is what the Sabbath day is really pointing to. And what day is that? The seventh day, or the 7,000 year, when God will have that day of rest. Thank you, and I really hope that you have understood this.